Okay, finally found a spot. I swear to gosh, living in a city is the worst when it comes to recording because you can never find a place with enough sound pollution. So I've been barreling around this in my head the whole weekend, and life prevails, you know, it just keeps going around in a circle. Life just keeps going. But you want to have a good life, right? You want to surround yourself with people that are pillars of the community that you can trust, that won't sneak up in the middle of the night and cut your throat. You want to have a good time. You want to have a conscious experience that's relative to other people's experiences where everyone is in relative cohesion. So how do you do that? Well, you got to learn to negotiate with people, but some people are just impenetrable. And I deduce this to a factor of trauma. And growing up, the only example we have to live our lives and to behave in the world is the example that our parents set forth. So, it's important that both parents are around, in my opinion, to have a healthy and stable upbringing. But that's not always the case. I mean, I just think some people are just also unfit to be parents and should have never have gotten married. And in my case, I feel like my parents, just going to say straight up, were surrogates. And that ultimately I'm a child of the universe, of 13.8 billion years of evolution. So you can sit here and tell me this and that, but the evidence is conclusive. Some people just weren't meant to be together. So along the way, I haven't been sitting in an office or cutting lumberjack my whole 20s, though that would have been cool. I got involved in several years of healthcare experience. I took many courses over mentally challenged individuals and their precursor to different diagnoses related to mental health disorders. And I got to really understand, I guess what some would refer as emotional intelligence. And I'm not going to sound pompous here. This is just what I was chose and the genes that I got. I don't know why I was blessed with an interest in nerdy things. And I recognize I'm very neurodivergent. I have generalized anxiety disorder. I'm constantly worrying about stupid things like my laundry when it's done. It doesn't help when these conditions are exacerbated by other circumstances in your life. Nothing is one thing. I'm not just depressed. And I'm gonna do a video about my cure for depression, but for me. But there's no one single factor that you could point out to any of these underlying problems. It's all interconnected. So getting to the topic at hand, I have a fair amount of experience with narcissists, both in public and personally. Like I said, I spent several years in healthcare, originally in optometry, and then I moved to mentally challenged, mentally disabled individuals. And sure amount of experience with narcissists and detecting their underlying attributes, what's driving them. Because ultimately, it's understanding consciousness. And I promote the use of psychedelics, whatever can make you reach that higher level of consciousness so that you can look down on the previous level of consciousness that you were at. And furthermore, even deeper into what the underlying issues were. And it's painful. It's not pleasant. It's not something you go out looking for. It's a religious experience. It's a awakening. And life events can happen too and push you into that direction, but I'm not opposed to using substances to reach that level. So just full disclosure, I'm very liberal and open-minded. So when you're arguing with a narcissist, first off, deep down, they're vulnerable. They feel weak, which is why they project that onto others and in their behaviors. And they're usually shy. And the one I'm talking about is a covert. They're they put everything as a surface level. And to other people, they seem really humble and really put together a stand-up person they can trust. But deep down, they feel really insecure. That's the real tragedy because it's very confusing, especially to those who are close to them or within, a family situation. They often exhibit avoidant personality disorder. They're a bit shy to stay away from situations. And this is not to be confused with sometimes Asperger's, where you can have narcissistic traits. This is much more perhaps trauma related. But when you're arguing with them, when you get never decide to express your feelings, because you'll automatically be the victim. They'll turn the conversation back on you, and you're left wondering at the end, confused, wait, what was the original, what was the point? And it'll make you think to yourself, because I endured this for years, decades. It's wait, am I the crazy one? No, I'm going out in the world and helping blind men see, literally. I don't know anyone else like me. I've never met anyone else like me that's had my unique life path that I've carved for myself. And I'm the best example I'm trying to set for myself. I know I lived with integrity, which is why I'm not upset about any of this, because I know with my dignity that unless I was messed up on drugs, which I've done, or just illicit use of a lot of alcohol and lust and women, which I admit I was detained from reality in those things, I've acted with a clear head on my shoulder. I'm not really ashamed of anything I've said, but then you'll still wonder, am I crazy? And you can't escape. You might be love bombed, oh, I love you so much, but I really can't. I can't be there for you. I really can't show up. And you're just confused. And when you get in a debate with them, this is literally the worst part. Let's see here. They may appear shy, humble, or anxious, but underneath is a vulnerable persona, someone who is selfish, manipulative, and has a grandiose sense of self. Not outwardly. It's not like Trump. Trump is a clear, overt narcissist, as my friends and I talk about. But this is more behind the scenes, and you'll know when you're in an argument is because you'll get in these circular conversations. It's like being arrested by the police. Anything and everything you've ever said will be used against you as ammunition, even though it's not pertaining to the matter at hand. And they'll throw out a bunch of irrelevant facts and details, just out of left field, literally, just to try to deter you. And it's a competition. So it becomes less about actually what the root problem is, and more about defenses and linguistics. And there's no real being logic and what the underlying issues of what is being said is not being diagnosed. And they have a low emotional intelligence. So you would know when you work with disabled people that they act crazy and stuff, but that's just a reflection of how they inwardly feel. And this is for all human beings. Words are just a vehicle or a tool for expressing how you really feel inside, which isn't always pleasant, obviously. So it comes out as harsh words. But when you're arguing with them, suddenly you're the child, and they find deny the facts, and will just put the blame back on you when you're trying to be up front. And the best thing you can do, so you don't really know these people unless you're directly involved with them. Outwardly, they may seem like they got a really put together life, and most of them do. They have probably quite successful lives. They have a partner. They have, all the luxuries that a modern human would have. But that's the facade, and to their really insecure inner selves. And unfortunately, there isn't really a cure for this. And I don't even like to label people with diagnosing them. I don't even like to do that, because we're all human beings and we're complicated, and some traits that you might have for some disorder might actually be congruent with another. And so it's really just like psychology. What clinical psychologists do is they narrow and they measure the effects of several different things. It's really up to the bias, and I might have a completely different diagnosis than someone else, but I could say with fair certainty that with the probably over 10,000 hours I've spent in clinical setting, people exhibit some pretty clear behaviors, and you look out, the behaviors are an expression of underlying issues at heart. Obviously, we're creatures of habit. So the solution, if I had any, would just be to separate, just distance yourself. You can't help these people their inward fractured states, no matter how pious, and they'll feel entitled and that they're doing the right thing and they're doing the right job. They're suddenly the hero, even though suddenly they can never be there for you. It's a big get up, and it can be very misleading and unfortunately pernicious in our culture. I think it's part of maybe some trauma and just the way that we were brought up in culture, the me, mentality, it's pervasive. So you gotta put your boundaries, advocate for yourself, let their bullshit ride off of you, and generally just know that, this is not meant to confuse you, and you are right and pure, and there's nothing that, whether they say or do, can affect you at heart. They're not a psychopath. They'll say, oh, I'll never hurt you. Well, of course you never hurt me. I hope you never want to hurt me. I'd hope that you want to support me in my darkest times. That's a real homeboy. But unfortunately, maybe not. And therein lies the solution, that ultimately you have no control. So thanks for watching, guys. A lot of experience with this. Glad you watched it. Now you know in the world that you're not the crazy one. And keep doing what you're doing. All right. Have a good day.